Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Wendy Sellers, the HR lady, with my co-host, JC.
Hey there.
Hey, JC, you want to talk about common sense?
No? What's that?
Common sense is not common, and common sense is not common practice. So today, our very special guest, Rhonda Scarf, is here to explain what that means. And by the way, Rhonda, I just love it because I always say, in many of my trainings, common sense is not common. And then everybody chuckles and I go, hold on a second. And then I go into explaining more why that is. But I want to hear from your side why common sense is not common practice.
Gosh, I wish I really knew the solid answer for that. It's not common practice because people don't approach their situations, their life, whatever, logically. None of us are logical. We're all illogical. So people do things that on the outside looks really stupid. So it's not common. I mean, it's common practice to say thank you to someone common sense to say thank you if they hold the door, but it's not that common practice, is it? Like, how hard is it to say thank you? Yet it doesn't happen. And so there's a lot of interpersonal behavior stuff that we think makes sense, but people don't do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you also mentioned the word thank you, because I say that all the time. I'm like, it's completely free. It fits every single budget. It's easy to say, but if you better say it like you mean it, or else your employees, your coworkers, the people you live with know that you're just being sarcastic. So, hey, didn't you write a book about this?
I did. Common sense is not common practice. Talking about the stuff we do at work, just basic stuff. And people read it and laugh because they see everyone else in the stories. They see everyone else doing that. And then hopefully they see themselves going, oh, I've done that. I'm not sure that I thought about it that way. But as I'm reading it, it's a big uh-oh.
Real quick for you.
Egg on my face, right?
Egg everywhere, allegedly, right? Hey, real quick, according to research provided by an anonymous recruiter, they say that most employers define common sense as having good judgment and practical knowledge that influence actions. Common sense at work employs these to influence your work habits. It involves identifying safety risks and making an effort to avoid them while not bothering others. And with that, I do have a question for the both of you. Do you know what the fear of chainsaws is called? Common sense. That's all. Back to you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we have a little comedy skit here going on too. That was actually really funny because it should be.
That's the least I do for both of our countries. Back to you.
Hey, I want to mix this into what we were talking about in episode 1. We started talking about difficult conversations. We're going to continue talking about this, but what are some common issues maybe that you have dealt with, and I could even share my own as well, that you've had to maybe coach managers through for, lashing out at their staff, possibly while under the influence of alcohol?
Oh, I mean, it does happen. Like we were referring to it in the last episode. I mean, joking about the wine, right? But as people were working at home, especially in the height of the pandemic, if you happen to live in a state or a province that did the lockdown, there was a real blur between home and work. And that is a really awkward conversation to say, is that coffee in your cup? I mean, it's an awkward conversation to say, I signed on Teams this morning at 8 and I didn't see you there till 10:30. Like, those type of difficult conversations. It's common sense that if you go to work, you're hired to be there at 9:00, you should be there. But yet it's a conversation that virtually every manager has had at some point in their career about you're not here, or you're disappearing early, or your lunch is really long, and like all the stuff that makes no logic that people do, but they do.
Yeah, and it really comes down to, in my opinion, and my experience as an HR consultant is, well, first of all, what are the company policies? If there's no policies on what time you need to clock in, client clock out, because some companies don't have those policies, right? Some companies say, we don't care when you do it, just do it and let us know when it's done. And or here's the deadline, and that's all all you need to worry about. Other companies are like, no, you have to be at your desk 8:30 to 5:30 Eastern Standard Time or whatever it is, and you have got to check in. So number one thing for our listeners is, what is your policies? And if you don't have policies, then how the heck are you going to hold people accountable with this difficult conversation? JC's got something here.
All this discussion about time tracking, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Right? What's got me is the fact that it sparks an emotion, Wendy. Rhonda, it brings up an emotion. And I guess what I'm getting at here is, what's a proper way to respond to an emotion if something's triggering you? I'm not saying particularly in this instance, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but what if it sparks an emotion in an employee talking about these things? How do we respond to our emotions effectively?
I'll jump in real quick. And first of all, and just say, before we hear from our expert here, is emotions are difficult. And we, as a manager, whoever it is that's having this difficult conversation, we got to first check our own. I'm a hothead and I'm a high D personality. So there's times that I'm like, nope, cannot have this conversation right now because I know I'm going to screw it up. Now, there's also times where there's an emergency situation and I can't avoid that. So I got to go outside and take a few deep breaths or whatever it is I need to do to get my act under control so that I could then control the situation or attempt to control the situation. So that's my take first. Was like, you got to check yourself first. You got to go look in that mirror and go, okay, am I part of the problem? I think I might be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The reality is we all get emotional, right? And so there's three main emotions that happen when we're having a difficult conversation. And the first one is the most common, and you just blank out. And that's usually happens to the person that you're having the conversation with, right? Because they either didn't know it was coming, they didn't know what you were going to say. They're just, they're deer in the headlights. And this happens to us all. We're just totally freeze, right? You have no idea what to say. And I jokingly say to my husband, I do my best work in bed because I wake up at 3 a.m. with the answer.
I do too. I even keep a notepad next to my bed.
Stat. Right?
I used to just send myself an email, but then I start reading emails. I'm like, no, just write it down and go back to bed.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're the manager having the conversation, we can be prepped, but the person we're having the conversation with isn't necessarily prepped. Like they don't know. So we have to deal with that emotion. The second is exactly what you talked about, Wendy, is people lose their cool. Like that defensive reaction is huge, and they push back, they yell back, they fight back. And most people respond in kind. So if you know that you're easily triggered as a manager and that somebody goes, what are you talking about? And their anger, you catch it. You've got to really pull yourself back from the ledge as well. And the third option typically doesn't happen to the manager or the HR professional, but it happens to the employee, is they cry. Now, they don't cry because they're sad. They cry because they're unbelievably frustrated that their lips aren't finding the words. And it comes from a place of frustration. And we also have to give them time to, work it through. And so whether it's our emotions or their emotions, the reason it's a difficult conversation is because we care about how this ends. I don't want to be embarrassed. Like, imagine having to have the conversation with someone that they don't smell nice. I mean, they'd be mortified. And of course, there's going to be emotions. And, most HR people have either practiced that conversation or had it. Yep. And so it's because we're embarrassed for them, or they're really embarrassed. We're picking up their emotions as well. So we have to not only deal with our emotions, we have to be ready to deal with theirs too.
We really do. And it's interesting that you brought up the body odor conversation, because I am doing a training in less than 24 hours and they've already asked me to put that conversation on the plate. And so it was specifically about bad breath. And yes, I've had that conversation before. And yes, even though I have over 25 years of experience HR, I don't want to have that conversation either. So I have to role play with myself sometimes, like, okay, what could possibly be said when I bring this up so that I'm prepared for it? Again, common sense is not common practice, and common sense is not a common skill. But why is this? It's because we need training. Everybody, every human being, I don't care what your role is, we need training and we need feedback. And we want to hear more from you, Rhonda, on that and how you help people in the administrative area in order to train them for all kinds of skills, but definitely the difficult conversation. So we'll talk more about that in episode 3.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.